Hello, I just want to cover some quick little tips about privacy, especially and specifically through your web browser, which is our portal to the world these days, right? So we're doing a lot of interfacing to a lot of places, virtual places online with these web browsers, and there's a lot of information and data that can be gathered about you. One of the things they can do is use your IP address, your Internet Protocol address, which is that number like 102.4.3.10 or whatever, some random number like that, that of course is like usually temporarily assigned to your router. And then your router will assign a more simplified version to you on like your home or business or whatever network. And that changes every so many weeks or whatever, typically, unless you have a fixed IP address, which can be even worse as far as tracking goes. What I do is I typically reset my router one or more times a week, which you can do by just unplugging it for a few seconds and then plugging it back in, and it will usually ask for a new IP address. And that kind of helps, but as soon as you log into your sites and all that and get all your cookies back, which cookies are just little pieces of data in the background that the website is allowed to save within your browser about you. So the most simplified version, you could say, probably just track how many times you visited that site, like a little counter or something. It's just basically like little key value pairs, like, you know, like site visits equals 10 or something, and then it will save that in your browser, and the next time you go to that same specific address, it will offer that cookie back to that site. And that, so sometimes that can help. It's sort of like a convenience versus privacy trade-off there. And like, say I had some type of a color theme set on this particular site, it could remember that color theme based on that cookie. Then even if my IP address changes, that's that. Well, the thing is there's such thing as third-party cookies that don't originate from that site, and that's really bad. We don't like third-party cookies. I disable them, and just so you know, even with the settings I'm about to show you with cookies severely restricted, I'm still able to do like 99.99% of the stuff that I need to do. It's very rare these days that this actually causes problems, except on really stupid sites, maybe, that, and that just gets me to go, hey, I'm not even going to use that site or service or whatever. But most all of the popular sites and services that you'll run into, if you disable the tracking cookies and stuff like that, then the site will still work. And you'll also end up, as just sort of a positive benefit that you're not even maybe directly going for, is you'll end up seeing less advertising, because the advertising is one of those areas that packs in a lot of these privacy invasive trackers and stuff. And I'm not even running any kind of an ad blocker per se, but sometimes ads get blocked because they aren't fair. You know what I mean? They're already advertising to me. Then they want to be tracking me too. It's like, it's just ridiculous. So right here you could see is that advertise here. This site is successfully showing me an ad. So, and sometimes I'll even get pop-ups that say, it doesn't usually block like little CSS pop-ups or anything like that for the most part, but I'll get ones and they'll say, you appear to be blocking ads. And it's like, oh, if only you had a little comment button, because I put, you appear to be tracking me. I'm not blocking ads. Try not tracking me and invading my privacy silently, and you can send all the ads through that you want. But anyway, I'm at a .org site, which originally insinuated a not-for-profit organization, a non-profit organization site. And, this is Linux, which is, it insinuates open source software and everything, Linux.org. This site, I think, has changed hands maybe a few times over the decades, but I thought my wife was just checking out some of the tracking cookies and stuff, and I thought, ooh, what a good idea, So I went here. This is a .org site. This is a site that you probably expect to have, really it shouldn't have any tracking cookies, honestly. You don't have to be a nonprofit site to register a .org or to run a .org site, but it's sort of deceptive if you're not, in my opinion. Um, so right here, Privacy Badger. This is a web plugin, web browser plugin that all the popular, at least Firefox and Chrome or Chromium. Chromium's the open source version of Chrome, which I would recommend to anybody. It's as alternative, like Chrome is the Google branded version of Chromium. They started the Chromium open source project, which now even Microsoft Edge browser draws their code from as well. Even Brave browser, there's several popular browsers that derive their code from that. And so it's just basically unbranded. I mean, if you could see right here, the little icon, it looks just like the Chrome icon, but it's just a blue color, which actually fits with my theme color scheme a lot better too. There's SeaMonkey, which is based on the Netscape 6 source code, but it actually has like the Firefox engine underneath it. Anyway, and there's of course the name brand, an old version of the name brand Firefox. So you could see here with that Privacy Badger plugin, it is attempting to detect and block cookies that are third-party trackers. And they just switched their method of doing it, which is really fishy. But you can supposedly dig into the settings on the tracker protection and set it so that it can detect trackers on your own personal system without downloading a big giant blacklist from the server, their servers. And so the newer way it's doing it is by blacklist. So it's not detecting any longer whether or not the cookie is specifically, like if they detect that it actually is doing tracking behavior, which I prefer. And I'm kind of scared because I feel like, this is part of EFF.org, which is the Electronic Frontier Foundation, which is supposedly one of those foundations that is trying to uphold our rights online and protect our privacy and stuff like that. And it really has done a really good job of that until recently. Now stuff's gotten weird. Like all these this extremist left groups have taken over, to say the least. I really feel like, that's my opinion on it. And stuff's changing. Stuff's getting deceptive, and they're changing the way that things work behind the scenes. So we got to be hip to that. So anyway, what it's doing now is it is downloading a blacklist thing, and it's supposedly not detecting whether or not the individual cookies are doing tracking like behavior against you, which I'm not comfortable with. You know what I mean? And they claim, oh, it's in your best interest because, some hackers at Google said that, they could do this whatever little manipulation scheme and still detect that it's you. And it's like, well, you know what? Honestly, there's going to be detection schemes they could do no matter if you have cookies completely shut off or not. There's ways that they can track you. You know what I mean? So that's kind of a moot point. And it just makes me think what they're doing is they're kind of rolling back their protection a little bit. But anyway, this is one of the best things we have. I'm sure there's alternatives out there, but this is what I use, and I'd encourage you to dig into the settings. Make sure to enable it in private or incognito browser mode as well, because if you have those private tabs open, then they're effectively just a little side session that can accumulate cookies, including third-party cookies, and they can exchange information with each other. So you're not as safe as you might think, even in private browser mode. So once you're done browsing in private browser mode, immediately close out all of your private browsing tabs, because if you just leave one open, it's keeping all the cookies that since you opened any tabs in private browser mode, any and all of those tabs worth of cookies. So if you go to Google in one tab and you're on Twitter or something on some other tab, and then you close out that Google one, you're like, good, that's all, that history's gone. No, it's not. It's still saved in that session until you close all those out. So anyway, if you search for Privacy Badger and everything, there's a big button on the site, and it will let you click to install this, and just click that and hit allow and all that. And you can see right here what it's doing is Google Ads, Google Analytics, and Ad Service Google are all being fully blocked on here, which is that's blocking the entire domain. It's just completely untrustworthy. Everything they're doing is bad, and it's trying to track you. This middle one just says to block the cookies, but you can allow domain functionality. So if they did try and send an image or something, that'd be fine. But right here, obviously, it's on full, like nothing Nothing from that domain is allowed. And then green is just like Privacy Badger wasn't even running. It just allows all the images and cookies and everything from the domain. So I didn't set these sliders. Privacy Badger did, based on the behavior of these cookies and whatnot. So you can see even at this harmlesslooking.org site right here, it is tracking us with 3 cookies, which is pretty trip. Like, okay, and that's a low average right there, honestly. So we'll close that out. Another one my wife mentioned when she went searching was the IRS. Even at irs.gov, now this is a site that has virtually no reason to have a tracking cookie. And if they did, it better be like a first party cookie, right? Like, okay, maybe they want to keep some little history. It shouldn't even, if they're doing anything normal or reasonable with a cookie, then it shouldn't even trigger this. It should not trigger. And look, I even have it set so that this Chromium browser will do a really super generic cookie protection thing. So it even caught a few cookies before Privacy Badger, and then Privacy Badger caught 8 more that the browser didn't catch. That's what that little count is right there. So we can see in here, show cookies and other site data. So they have these weird cookies, and you can see the value of them in here. Like the content, that at least that looks like encrypted. It's like some encrypted something going on there. Kind of weird though. Name, domain, irs.gov. I don't know specifically why this browser chose to connect those. They might not even be a big deal. Local storage. Doesn't look like anything's in there per se. This is showing me everything. Oh, this is all the allowed stuff. So that stuff is allowed. Because I was going to say it doesn't look, because it is from irs.gov. You know, that all looks good. Let's click on blocked. So here we go. Like they have Twitter. Like what? Why would they have a Twitter freaking cookie on irs.gov? You know what I mean? External refer, guest ID, whatever. So good thing those are blocked, because otherwise Twitter knows that you're going to this IRS page. Like, isn't that ridiculous? Especially with what we know about these kind of groups. It done on there. So I'm sure there's probably a share on Twitter thing down here somewhere. Coronavirus tax relief. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people need that, but I'm just so sick of seeing that junk. Yeah, down here. This little stupid share on Twitter thing. Like, if you want to share this on Twitter, all you got to do is click the address bar, right click, copy, go to Twitter, and then start a thing and paste in irs.gov. You know what I mean? Right click, paste it in your little tweet. It's just like a 3-step procedure instead of a 1-step procedure down here. So that's that cost of convenience. That's that trade-off of privacy right there. Like there, you can see right there, Twitter IRS news. So I'm going to right click, open in incognito mode. And you can, in Firefox style browsers and other browsers, you can right click, open in private mode usually. And this will help prevent, because I'm viewing that other page in a non-incognito, non-private mode window, it will, those cookies, a lot of them that do slip through will persist. So they'll be able to begin easier tracking and stuff. So right here, all that was doing was just connecting us to the Twitter site. You know what I mean? So it's like, why not just, you know, they can go grab a freaking Twitter logo themselves. And I mean, are you serious? Like, are the web developers that lazy? They're going to use like this plugin that's going to track you and stuff, you know? Obviously so. And in all honesty, I'm just not even a big fan of these things being on social media. It's like, I don't know. That's just my little personal opinion on it, you know? But I just feel like, why are you on a proprietary platform? You know? Like, whatever. I know there's reasons, but... So that's the same for a lot of these down here, most likely. And then we could go over here, the Privacy Badger again. Okay, and this one, I forgot we hadn't viewed this one yet. So this is worse than the .org site. This is a .gov site. And you can see they have Google. Like, why do they have Google ads? Why is the freaking IRS trying to run Google ads at you, for one thing? And then for another thing, they're allowing tracking cookies through. And you have to protect yourself. You know what I mean? Can you imagine walking into the IRS office and there's like a little Google camera staring at you, like a little like G cam or something? And I'm just picking on Google because hey, you're using tracking cookies. Take them away, and I wouldn't be picking on you. Twitter, same thing. You walk into the IRS, and it would be one thing to see like Twitter and Google logos and around there in a few places and stuff. And it's like, whatever, kind of weird, but whatever. But actual cameras, from those companies inside of the IRS office, that's what this is effectively doing. You know what I mean? This is the virtual online marketplace, or whatever you want to call it, the information superhighway, all that. They are recording, cross-tracking what you're doing here. And this is with third-party cookies disabled. So you can only imagine, and these are not stock settings. So you can just amplify this by like an order of magnitude, I would imagine, up to maybe of what would be going on if I didn't even have these restrictions. And here you can see this static add-to-any.com doesn't appear to be doing anything wrong, so they're letting it through. It's fine, and it's from another website, like, which is still questionable on irs.gov. Like, why can't you hire some real engineers? But whatever. And then Twitter is not fully blocked. They're letting like that little Twitter image through, obviously, I imagine, maybe. But the cookies are not allowed because they are doing tracking behavior. Good old irs.gov. Thanks a lot. And then they want you to install an app. And apps are, in this day and age, we have a thing called PWAs, Progressive Web Apps. And those allow websites to actually install an icon on your desktop, which is fine, and then that icon, when you double click it, will take you, it's like a bookmark that's accessible from your desktop, so to speak, and that will take you to the website, which then can act like modern web browsers over the last 5 or 10 years, at least, can do like all the stuff you would expect, like out of an IRS app, let's say, virtually, unless you're just super lazy, everything that you'd want, like all this functionality right here, you can do that on a website. You know what I mean? There's no reason you need to install that application. An application gives that app access to all of your sensor data and stuff like that. With the web browser, it's sort of it's sandboxed once over again within the web browser, so it's got like a double sandboxing around it to where you can really narrow it down. If you want to, you can restrict, on some phones anyway, you can restrict what the web browser can do, and then, further restrict what an app within the web browser is doing. So they can display animations, rich graphics, handle mouse events, all the stuff, or touch events or whatever, all the stuff that you'd expect outside of the browser. 99% of it they can do within the browser, but they don't want to. They want to be able to access your sensor data, access your GPS, all that, which if you do give it permission inside of the browser, a lot of that they can still access. But anyway, avoid apps. And if you do get apps, try alternative marketplaces like F-Droid. That's the letter F dash Droid. That's short for like Free Droid, I guess. And that's all open source applications that are heavily checked for the most part against tracking behavior, and and then the source code's open, so you can say, ask questions online to people and say, hey, what do you think about this? Go into some Android programming forum and ask people to take a look at it or something, and they can go in and investigate what permissions it's using for you and stuff like that, versus these closed source proprietary apps, like I would imagine this would be, plus going through Google or whatever, iPhone. I can especially speak for Google because I have some experience programming through, that vector. There's a lot of stuff with like Google Play data and all these extra APIs where it's just more and more information about how often you're using that application on your phone. I mean, beyond just regular old sensor data, it's just totally broadcasting to these developers, which is effectively the corporations or organizations behind that, and it's telling them just mad amounts of information about what you're doing. And some people, I know that technicalities can go above and beyond them, and they just have to say, hey, I can't deal with that stress. But that's why I'm here, giving you this video, and if you've watched this far, that's a good start, you know, like, of just knowing that, hey, just do what you can, like, cut that in half, or, you know, cut out 90% of that tracking and make it hard, make them look for other ways instead of just handing it over because you're like, oh, I don't know what else to do, you know. It's as simple as avoiding the app and just trying to go to the .com or .gov or whatever site instead of using the app. And a lot of places like Twitter, all the social places for sure, are going to pester you. You know what happens when you log in? They'll put up that big banner across the screen and say, for a better experience, download the app. And it's like, yeah, you're intentionally hampering my experience because I'm not using the app to make me feel like I need to. And it's ridiculous. There's no reason in this day and age, virtually no reason. I mean, if you're trying to play like a really high performance video game, like a really modern high performance video game, yeah, it's probably going to be able to get more access to more system resources by running as an application outside of a browser. Things like that, you know what I mean? But if you're playing like even Angry Birds on the vast majority of phones today could run efficiently within the browser. I was playing that years ago, a browser version of that. So I know that, you know, and now I've even gotten phones for free through like the prepaid service was like, hey, if you order a prepaid card online, you know, like a $30 card or a $40, $35 card, whatever it is, and we'll send you a free phone. And so those are like almost all of my phones that I have, and I have a stack of phones now, are those types of phones. So those are like budget devices. I mean, even if you paid for them, they'd probably only be like $30. So, and those are running like recent versions, Android 5, Android 6, or maybe even newer now, but like ones that I got a year or two ago or 3 ago are even running, you know, they were running almost the very least recent version of Android at the time. Not that I'm a big fan of that. I like to basically use the oldest version of Android I can get away with most times. But anyways, just to say, like, people have access to phones that are pretty powerful, pretty modern for next to nothing, at least here in the States. So, IRS, shame on you. That's bad. We got 8 tracking cookies plus these ones. So it's like over 8 tracking cookies on irs.gov. State of Oregon, 4 tracking cookies. Right here, Cloudflare, Google, and jQuery. Ooh. And the thing with jQuery too, that's it's kind of old school. It's funny to see them still using that, but that was actually one of the few coding frameworks that I actually kind of liked for a minute. I thought it was pretty clever for when it came out back in the day. It sort of predates all the Angular and React crap that is out there now. But what they can do is they can ask for that library, which a coding library is just a bunch of people went through and did a bunch of this boilerplate code for the web programmer people, web developers ahead of time. And that way they've simplified stuff, like if they want to create this big giant overzealous button right here, then there's a way in jQuery to set the values on that, you know, by it's like shorthand code instead of the longer hand code. And honestly, in my past experience of web programming and development, I've tried to use those libraries, and then the stuff I wanted to do was just ended up so slow and clunky, like doing little animations and stuff, that I just had to abandon them anyway. And the vast majority of the time, those libraries just don't work out. So I have to wonder about people who use those libraries, honestly, especially big entities like state governments and federal governments and stuff. It's like, oh, really? You can't, like, I'm an indie guy. I do programming contracts for like basically individuals that might have an LLC or something, you know, and like, yeah, a lot of them use WordPress and these libraries and stuff, but they have access to people like me who would even go above and beyond that if need be and stuff. So it's just like, really, you got, you know, here I am. I consider myself somewhat underemployed right now, but anyway, it's obviously a bunch of BS. But yeah, so right here, we've got at least 4 tracking cookies, and it looks like the browser's blocking some cookies as well. So we've got over 4 tracking cookies on Oregon.gov, which are, of course, sending out, they're allowing these websites to spy on us, is what they're doing. So you could see Google is obviously a big time one. They would already know that, hey, you just went, if you don't have this privacy badger cookie blocking enabled and stuff, then they would know. And if you are signed in on your Google accounts, which Google is really bad at, probably worse than most companies about keeping you signed in and harassing you if you sign out and saying, hey, you need to enable two-factor authentication. Hey, verify your home address. Hey, verify your phone number. Hey, verify your backup email account, and da-da-da. They just really give you a bad time if you log out recently. I've noticed it's pathetic. And this is why, because they can double down on that tracking by, it's one thing they can infer, like, oh, that might be you, or that's probably you, because it's the same IP, the same browser version, and, I'm using Chromium dot whatever, so it's like, they know that even my wife, who's probably using Chromium, she's probably using a slightly different version. And it's a different version of Windows that she's using. You know what I mean? So they can make all those inferences and know, okay, this is probably her, or this is, XYZ profile that seems to be a woman, probably within whatever age range or whatever. And it's like, okay, yeah, we're not a big fan of all that, but at least they're having to make like a best guess inference. But if you're logged in, you know what I mean? You're logged in on Google, which I should be on other tabs. Google's gotten really horrible about stuff. They bought out YouTube, and then now your YouTube is simultaneous, your Gmail simultaneous with search. You're automatically logged into every single Google service, which, like, hey, somebody please, up in the big federal government or whatever, that's a bad monopoly practice right there. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care that Google owns all those services. I do, but I shouldn't have to. And so those are separate services. They shouldn't have to be, we shouldn't be forced under the same umbrella. I should be able to have separate logins if I want. I should be able to choose whether or not I log in. Sorry, little side bust rant here. And we should be able to choose to log out of those services individually. We should have more control over our tracking. And Google, to their credit, has manipulated that to where they've made it a lot easier to go in and access your privacy data. But you go in there and there's virtually nothing. It's just like dummy buttons where it's like, oh, here's like 5 buttons maybe to turn on and off. And you're like, really? That doesn't cover what, I mean, I'm glad I got to it in a click or two, but it's just showing me you don't give me very many levers to change here, And I can understand offering a simplified version to people as well, that it's not the biggest deal in the world, but they'd like to, at least go in and take a look. But hey, if we want to go in and really dig in and adjust this stuff, we should be able to. So just another reminder, Privacy Badger, get that thing. I'm going to show you in a minute how to go in and actually crank down the settings a little bit on your web browser. Novel coronavirus updates. On March 23rd, 2020, a new executive order. Look how old that executive order is. That was only supposed to be just long enough for the legislators to have a session and decide whether or not these proposed mandates should be extended, and they have never done so. So now we're still wearing masks, and she's still mandating it. And even people with medical exemptions, now they're ignoring, like, people are effectively making up their own rules based on these effectively expired governor mandates, to where they're not even allowing people to work with doctor's notes that say that they should not be wearing a mask for health reasons, for serious health reasons and stuff like that. And they're not letting people work because of that. And it's like, oh, really? You don't? Even the stupid order itself, if you read the order, it says if somebody has a doctor's exemption, that's life. They have a doctor's exemption. You need to honor that. You know what I mean? But now it's so freaking ridiculous. Sorry to side bust on that. Okay, anyway, yeah, too many cookies, and then they're tracking cookies. It's like, are they getting paid off to have those tracking cookies? What's going on here? Oops, I didn't mean to be exposing anybody's personal information on there or anything. But so even on Triggered right here, where we see that, Triggered's like one of the lesser of the evils of social media sites, or this is actually locals.com. Triggered is Don Jr.'s specific thread on it. But you can see even then they're using Google Analytics, YouTube, and Cloudflare, which I don't know. That's kind of typical for some sites like this. Not that it's okay, but that's not extremely out there. You know what I mean? They're obviously doing some YouTube integration. Google Analytics is pretty common. That way, it's just a third-party analytics system where these people can go. Like for small-scale sites, I've worked for people where they wanted exactly these cookies, these services enabled. Cloudflare is this CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, and JS, I guess, means JavaScript. So what it is the Cloudflare does things to where they can offer services to protect you from certain types of attacks that might be difficult to protect from, like hacking attacks. And they also allow this site to maintain servers that are relatively small, that just have like the computing power on them, and then the data, like images and users and content and all that, can be on this Cloudflare site. And then ideally you can have one server. I don't know. I've never really found content delivery networks to be very good. I think they're just an idea that seems like something like they might pan out. Maybe in a few little niche situations they do, but obviously they're slipping in their tracking cookies. And that was a thing on that the other site with the jQuery, was that jQuery library. What I meant to get to finally was that they can download that library. It's not that big. I mean, probably 100K, maybe 200K or something, which is nothing these days. And what it's doing is you're still downloading it. You're downloading it from jQuery.com, and they could just put it on their server, and then you could just download it from them. And the first time you visit that site, it would be like a split second, most likely, and you would download that file, and then it would automatically know, hey, you've got jQuery from the IRS Gov or whatever site you got it from, or Oregon Gov, whatever site you got it from, and then they can, it's there, it's in your browser until you clear out all your stuff, all your save settings and everything. But the one benefit of them giving it to you from jQuery.com, well, for jQuery's benefit, they can track you, obviously, but the benefit is that then you can use that same jQuery library if you go to, say, Google was using it or something. Then if you go to google.com and they are using jQuery, you don't have to spend that little split second that one time you visit Google after you clear your cache out to re-download the jQuery library. You know what I mean? So it's like, okay, it might save you a split second here or there, but in the reality, it's like, would you rather have your privacy or an occasional split second? I'd rather take a split second and keep my privacy a little more private. So that's that. And then if we go here, surprisingly, wikipedia.org, nonprofit organization, right? Known for being kind of swinging progressive left, extremist left in some situations, especially when it comes to like anti-vax information and stuff like that. They totally gloss that over, and it's ridiculous in my opinion. But like I said, that's my opinion. Do your own research. I don't feel like if you go to a site, like if I go to their anti-vaccine hesitancy, if I go here, you can see the little tiny scroll thumb up here in the upper right. This is a pretty big page. This is one of their larger pages here. There is nothing to the effect on this page. Forget you, Wikipedia. I will not donate to you. I think I have in the past, and I regret that. But you go down here, and the last time I went through this a few months ago, it's like there is nothing. Other vaccine myths, you know what I mean? Common themes, stuff like that. For vaccine hesitancy, effectiveness, and they say all this stuff like as if it's so effective and everything. But when you go down, anyway, if you go through this, it's going to basically say that the U.S. ran a fake vaccine. Oh, how weird. Myths and stuff. It's going to say that there's basically no reason that you should have any hesitancy towards vaccines. But that if you search on government sites. So if we go to, I can't remember the name of the place. I'll have to look it up and do another podcast on it or screencast, whatever. It comes down to the fact, if you look at the government entity that was responsible for testing the safety and efficacy of vaccines, it said that it's undetermined and that they needed even more specialized group would probably be able to possibly make some determination, but at the level that they were rolled out at, there's no way to determine the safety and efficacy of virtually any vaccine whatsoever. So that's the thing. And we have a expedited vaccine court that pays off a lot more people than you probably be comfortable hearing about that come forward with vaccine cases. The seasonal flu is crazy. It's like plus or minus 80%. You know what I mean? 8 out of 10 people, I think it's 88%. But 8 out of 10 people, don't quote me on that, go look it up for yourself. 8 out of 10 people get paid off for filing a claim against the seasonal flu. You know what I mean? Give me a break. 8 out of 10 people, 4 out of 5 people that say, hey, I was injured by the seasonal flu vaccine, get compensated for that. And they want to act like there's nothing. To be vaccine hesitant is craziness. And I mean, when you get into the global scale of things and what's happened with people, it's pretty sketch. You know, there's a very high percentage, 3/4 or more. It's closer to 8 out of 10 from what I know. Once again, don't quote me on it. Look it up for yourself. With these new coronavirus trial vaccines, are having severe reactions to them. So it's unbelievable. I mean, I can believe it on one hand because it's expedited and it's so crazy. It's like, yeah, you're probably going to get a high. I mean, I would think like maybe 30% of the people having adverse effects from the vaccine would be kind of high. But it's like, what are you guys working with where the vast majority of people are having these adverse effects? But anyway, that got off on a rant again. Once again, I'm sorry about that. That's to say Wikipedia, who's even this far left and whatever, oh, they do have some cookies. My bad. The browser caught them, though. They're just really general tracking cookies. So interesting. But they not an overflowing abundance that, so your built-in browser mechanisms can apparently catch them. Let's go here and see cookie and other site data. Those are the ones allowed through, the blocked. Okay, these are all Wikipedia ones so far. Wikimedia, Wikinews. So hey, to their credit, the tracking cookies are between their own sites. Which, whatever. But I'll let them slide on that. And they're blocked. The built-in tracker's blocking them. But it's like, oh, big freaking whoop. MediaWiki.org. These are all tightly woven within the Wikimedia umbrella here. So I'm not overly worried about any of those. So they get a B+ on their tracking cookie rating from me, which, Privacy Badger didn't. There was nothing big and bad and evil enough that had to get caught by Privacy Badger here. But this vaccine hesitancy information on here is ridiculous, of course. So what you can do is dig into your settings on whatever browser you have. This is a more recent-ish version. I think it's like a year old or so version of Chromium, which is nearly identical to Chrome. Of course, a little bit less Google-specific crap in it. I'll go into settings. I click on this triple little dot settings kind of menu right there, and then go to settings. And then we get in here to settings. For one, person 1 is logged out. There is just a generic profile. Don't be logged in. Don't customize this. Oh, it's so cute, I want to pick this. Or don't fall for that junk. Stay logged out. Stay more anonymous. They're still going to build up a profile the best they can with you. But what they want you to do is log in and, we could do a little thing that tells you if you have emails or whatever, That's just binding you even closer and closer to Google. So sync in Google services is disabled. These very top switches, autocomplete search, other Google services. So these are going to google.com, something or another, autocomplete off. You know what I mean? It's just not worth it. Turn it off. Show suggestions for similar pages when a page can't be found. Off. They don't need to, you don't need their help. Safe browsing protects you from dangerous sites. What that does is that's sending all the sites you visit against their information on their server. So or it could be downloading a blacklist, but it says send URLs of some pages you visit to Google when your security is at risk. So if they may be, I'll give them the benefit of the doubt and say they may be sending you a big blacklist of sites, right? But any sites, and maybe a whitelist, right? But any domains that aren't on that list, they would be sending it off most likely. So they say right here, sends URLs of some pages, which is, the web address of some pages you visit to Google when your security is at risk. So they're effectively logging every page you visit right there. You know what I mean? The time that's going to a server with the time, your current IP address, all that stuff. It's phoning home, so to speak. And even if they just phone home and say, hey, browser, you don't want any of that. Help improve Google security. No thanks. Turn it off. You know what I mean? If this was to the right, it would be blue back here and it would be on. It's to the left and it's switched off. And you can see detect dangerous apps and sites, sends addresses of pages you visit, limited system information, and some page content even. Wow. You know what I mean? Wow. Make searches and browsing better. Sends addresses of pages you visit to Google. That just in general, like, oh, we're just going to randomly send content. So they are totally looking over your shoulder. If, the further down this list you get especially, which is just like shut them all off. That's syncing Google services. Other web browsers will have similar stuff. I'm just going to go down the most pertinent ones. Passwords. This is another thing I'm big on. They try and force this two-factor authentication on us. Google gets all pissed if you log out and stuff, but yet they default to remembering your passwords. And it's like, are you kidding me? All you want to do is keep me logged in and keep my info wide open to whoever might be able to access my system, right? And so I shut off remember passwords. You know what I mean? I've got this little password manager up here. It's offline, KeePass XC. That's what I use right now. I've got some plans to even get away from that, but this encrypts them on my disk. It uses a master password to encrypt the whole thing. I just keep that simple, like a PIN number, and then I input that PIN number, and then that opens up, and I can generate cryptic passwords with that, cut and paste them between the websites. It just takes an extra second or two to open that. I'll just open it initially right here, and you can see right here I can just type in a PIN number right there, just like that, hit go, and then it opens up a thing that's alphabetically listed of all the sites, and I can just click the site, double click the password, right click copy, and then come over here, paste it, and I'm good to go. It's that many steps. And then most of those sites are going to leave you logged in anyway without all this password crap. So it's not even, I pretty much, once I clear out all my browser cache and history every so often, and that will log me out of those sites, and then I just go and do that like once a month or whatever, relog into all those sites. Not a huge deal. Okay, so I turn that off. You just flip this top switch, that should get rid of most of these auto sign in, which automatically signs it. Give me a break. See, they do the two-factor stuff because they want to know your email. They want two factors of who you are and where you're at, and more ways to lock you out if they so choose. But as far as if you're still whitelisted with them, then hey, you're in. Hey, you're never out. You're always in. It's laziness. Don't fall for it. Payment methods. No, none of their business. How long does it take to punch in credit card information? You know what I mean? If anything, I would suggest using a third-party site that's not Google or something if you are going to store your payment information, or a third-party little app or something like that, or plugin or whatever. Preferably one that's vetted for being open source and not tracking and sharing your data and stuff like that. But otherwise, it just takes a minute, especially if you're at home or whatever. Pull out that card, punch in the information, whatever. Shouldn't be a big deal. Once you do it a few times, you'll get used to the little song and dance, and it's just, do you want to give, it's like, what's the saying, America, give me convenience or give me death? Well, you might be getting both. So, in my opinion. We might be addresses and more. No thanks. Don't remember my addresses. Get out of here with that crap. And one thing too is even if they autofill this stuff, they might detect an address tab that you don't want to fill out. It might punch in your address, and these days you don't even have to necessarily click submit for that information to go to that server. It might be off to that server the second it gets in that box. You know, whether or not you can tell, it will be verifying that. Just like when you type in a search on a search engine, on a web search engine, you start typing, it starts popping up all those auto suggestions. It's sending that search, every character you type, it's sending that complete search behind the scenes, nearly light speed, to Google or Bing or DuckDuckGo or whoever, and it's filling that out and then sending you responses back. Hey, does this sound like where you want to go? So if you accidentally cut and paste the wrong stuff, they've got it. It's buried in their logs. And now there's a thing called big data, quote unquote big data. And what that is it's like, yeah, it doesn't seem like like that's lost in the sands of the Sahara Desert or whatever, right? Like who's ever going to find that little blurb that you accidentally pasted in the wrong box? Well, big data that's all getting saved off to servers, right? That's all getting archived. And with big data, they can go back later in the future when they decide, you know what, we want to see if this person ever did this, or we just want to go through and see everything they've ever pasted into one of our, or typed into one of our search boxes or anything. Facebook was spotlighted for doing that type of a thing, and a big deal was made out of it. That was the only, they'll basically do one-off little cases like either here or the UK, and then that's all you'll ever hear about it, and then they do some little thing where people start scratching each other's backs in the political arenas, and then sorry about, the individual. So save and fill address is off. Got theme, show home button, show bookmark, font size, custom fonts, page zoom. Okay, search engine, manage search engines. You can see I have DuckDuckGo. It's the only one I have. I deleted all the other search engines in here, and I just have DuckDuckGo. It's debatable who's DuckDuckGo even run by, like all that kind of stuff. But this is, as far as popular search engines go, this is probably your best bet. I'm sure there's others out there that might be even better. And I don't use Google, Amazon, Bing, none of that crap. If I want to use them for one specific one-off reason, I'll usually just come here, right click, and go to new incognito, and then from here I can go to Google, if I can spell it right, google.com, and then I can use it. And then of course they're gonna bug me, like, oh, reinstall Chrome to stay secure. You're using an older version of Chrome. No, get out of my face. And that's the thing too. The reason they don't want me to stay more secure, because a version of Chrome I'm using isn't that old. It's within reason of being new. And what they want to do is they want to make sure that I get the Google version and that I'm properly, all my settings are reset, and they're tracking me. That's what they want. Their latest thing with that. So you can also do about : in most browsers, and then hit enter, and that will tell you what version you're using. So you can see I probably shouldn't broadcast exactly. You wouldn't want to broadcast on a screencast like I'm doing, because then somebody could target vulnerabilities in your specific version of your browser, right, and use those. So F you, whatever companies or individuals might be doing that, whatever. I'm not worried about it. I lock down my firewall pretty good usually, so whatever. And I avoid going, like, if you are on a social site and somebody pastes some little link in for you to go visit a .com, if that's not a .com that you're familiar with, or if it's a shortened URL like link.in/da-da-da and you can't even tell what's behind that URL, don't go there. You know what I mean? If you can't resist and you do, at least do it in a private browser mode. Right click the link, private or incognito mode. But don't go to those, because those sites, that's where those types of attacks are more likely to happen. This is cool though, because I want to show you my command line that I have. And what I do is, if I, when it's up there on the bar, you can go to the thing and then go down and, right click again until you get to this properties. And then in here, you can see the target, and this is your command line. It's kind of hard to see in this box here. So What I'm going to show you is what's in that box, a little bit easier to read, because Windows is still stuck using the same thing they have since 1990 apparently. At least this version 8.1. I think 10 might have fixed a few things in that regard, like at least the path browsing. But anyway, the command line, you can see it is a long command line and it has spaces in it, so that's why it's in these double quotes right here. So this initial command, which is right here, this is what finds my, see, it's even called Chrome. That's how similar to, you know, if you look at yours and yours is Chromium, you'll notice it's very similar. It's just, this is just the open source project and there's no Googling here. And Flash is disabled, that's good. So C program files, x86 Chromium application, there's the actual binary program that runs. That's the actual application itself, right? And then all this crap right here are special switches that I pass to it that you might want to pause the video and write them down. This dash dash actually goes in front of this disable machine ID. So any of these long names like that, it's a whole thing like that. Like dash dash, no space, disable machine ID, and this one's dash dash, disable search engine collection, dash dash, fingerprint canvas, data noise. All these are little tricks that sites can use above and beyond cookies, or below and beyond, however you want to think about it. And they can do all these things to track you. Like fingerprinting a canvas image is a canvas is kind of like just a little rectangle box of pixels. And the idea that was part of the HTML5 spec like 10-15 years ago, whatever, and the idea with that was like, oh cool, you can make like video games or, you know, stuff like that in the browser, which is one of those reasons I'm saying there's like little to no reason you should ever need to install an app, especially like on a phone or whatever, or even the apps on the App Store, apps for desktop like Windows Store or Microsoft Store or whatever. Screw that stuff. That stuff is all tracking. You know what I mean? Those apps run so much slower. They're so much bulkier. Steam even, like the video game Steam thing, same thing. Bigger, slower, bulkier. If you can get the application, not just the little app, but the full application from the real publisher of the real developer, outside of any so-called store, you're better off like that. But anyway, they do things like fingerprinting. They can put a little invisible rectangle right here, and they can generate like a random amount of white pixel, clear, transparent pixel data in there. And it's sort of like one of those QR codes. It's like an invisible QR code, basically. And they can do, that's what canvas fingerprinting is. So then they can spray that in your browser, and then even if you have all your cookies disabled, they can go back later and ask for, you know, such and such canvas and get that saved canvas back and be like, oh, there's that one that if we look on our little database here we have over in our data center, we can see we sprayed you and we assigned you this number, you know. And anyway, they can just use your imagination for what they could do with that. So there's all sorts of stuff, but if you are savvy enough to go in and add these command line programs after, you know, like if you're familiar with the command line, you type a program like Chrome and then you type space and then like option 1, option 2, and of course, you know, those would be like these things. So I could even just copy and paste this. Like if I paste this at the command line here, we'll get rid of all this crap, and I'm just going to right click paste. And some people might have to, if you're literally running from command line to test like that, you'd have to go to edit paste if you don't have quick pasting enabled. So that's what it is. It's doing this C program Chrome dash dash machine ID. It's adding all this crap that you'd never want to type, right? And I'm going to hit enter twice apparently. And boom, I have a new Chrome browser with all those settings, those flags. So protecting me supposedly from canvas fingerprinting and all that crap. So that's just something to know. Whatever browser you're using, look it up. Firefox and Mozilla style web browsers have an about :config. Chrome and Chromium have this Chrome : / whatever stuff, and that's kind of what these effectively are. Yeah, Firefox browser is going to have, let me see if I can do that here in SeaMonkey. You're going to type about : config, SeaMonkey's a little bloated, which is cool because it has all this stuff down here. Like it has a built-in mail program. It's got a built-in IRC chat and like probably a what is it? Come on, can you tell me what these are? So we got the browser, we got the mail and news groups, which kind of like RSS feeds and stuff. Composer for what you see, what you get. Editor, WYSIWYG editor, an address book, and then IRC Chatzilla. So that's why it's a little bit bigger and bulkier. If we go to About SeaMonkey, we can see that it's got this cool like classic Fender-y Netscape 6 look. Right here you can see this is going to be, it's just like Firefox 60 effectively, maybe even newer. There's the build identifier. So that's just the about colon. That's like the equivalent of this page. I typed about colon, and then they know, they're like, oh, that's one. Internet Explorer was actually the first one to do that. I think maybe Netscape had, okay, Internet Explorer was the first one to do about blank, but Netscape was the first one to do, here it is, even Netscape 2. There it is, about colon. So there's Netscape. They did that originally, Netscape 2. But yeah, so this is roughly the equivalent of that kind of a page, and then you can go to like release notes, build config. This is about build config. This is Mozilla, Firefoxy type of stuff, Gecko based browser specific here. If you really want to like look at, so it was built, here's the command lines this one was built with, not the ones that it's run with, but the ones that it's actually built with. So you can see like I don't know if there's anything noteworthy. Google Location Service API key files. So with that, maybe that's not something we want there. So if we wanted to go back and rebuild it ourselves, maybe we could disable those flags if we're worried about it. But that's kind of cool to know. Like if you took the raw source code, this is basically, these were the command lines they actually ran with the raw programmer source code to build up this thing. So then the last thing that I was really getting at is about config. If you type it like that and hit enter, it will usually pop up a warning like, are you sure you want to mess with these settings? And you say yeah. I've obviously bypassed that warning now. And then at first it's going to give you all these bold ones, and these bold ones are ones that I've changed. Have I really? Are there any of them bold? Maybe no. Okay, yeah. Wow. So all these bold ones at this top, you know, from where we're at with the scroll thumb up, have all been changed from the default values. So that gives you an idea of what's been changed. There's stuff like app update, post update, true. So whatever that means, you got to look these up online. You can say Mozilla about config, and then you can see support Mozilla org, about config editor, Firefox, Mozilla Zine. I'll middle click that to open it in a new tab. I'll click that one too. And there's several, it's across several places where you're going to find information. You know, this is just telling you the basics of about config. Doesn't look like it's telling you the specifics. So right here, this article about config entries, this is the one that's, I think, somewhere there's one that tells you about, okay, yeah, it is. Just finally finished loading. You can see the scroll thumb got real small. So it tells you what all these are. So if we want to, I'm just going to do Control F and type in canvas, and then it's going to search through the page for the term canvas, which it doesn't look like it's finding. So maybe if there's a fingerprint, yeah, I guess it doesn't have canvas. So that I don't know if maybe there's some option somewhere for that, but and then configuration for Firefox editor. Opening about config, I accept, reset Firefox preferences, and then here's the Mozilla Zine. Same thing, right? But anyway, that's where you'd find out about more about those specific settings and stuff. Some of them go beyond settings that you're able to access with the user interface there. And then Chromium would be like, what is it? Chrome flags. Best Chrome flags for better browsing. Actually I can go Chromium and then Woolist, and this is like an individual site, and you can go there and you can see scroll thumbs little, big page. So this is where I get my Chromium browser usually. I might have got the one I have from Chocolatey, which I wouldn't really recommend Chocolatey, honestly, but I tried it out. But anyway, these ones right here towards the top of the page, you can see there's like portable archive installer package, portable archive installer. Oh yeah, here it is. These flags over here tell you what's going on, like no sync, Chromium without defined Google API keys. So that was the thing we even saw in the Mozilla browser. So Google services like Sync, Hotword, Translate, Now, Hangouts do not work, which is pretty cool, honestly. You will not be able to synchronize your data except if you create your own Google API keys. However, you will be able to sign into your Google account after a simple setting, disable allow Chromium sign in, which was what I recommended against. So you probably would prefer, for more privacy, this no sync option. That doesn't even allow you to sign into those stupid Google accounts and stuff. Ungoogled Chromium without Google integration and enhanced privacy based on Ungoogled Chromium project of Eloston. So this is a particular individual or organization that is, gone through and taken the time and effort to like extract as much of the Google wirings that they can out of it. Marmaduke, I don't know what that is. Maybe that's a specific build or some person that builds it or something. Chromium is up to date. It means Chromium browser and Google Chrome are based on the same latest stable version and security updates as the Chromium source code. So this, I guess, means that if you use this version, this 86.0.4240.75, whatever, Sunday, October 2020, which would be like right here, it was built, and that if you were to go download the latest stable version of just Chrome, the name brand Chrome, it should be pretty much identical. But this one, of course, is has all the crap that you don't want disabled, but yet it has all the cool stuff added. Compiled with Widevine support. It's not open source. Chromium will be able to play DRM content on Netflix, which I'm personally anti-DRM. I disable it, and if even on Amazon, I notice they'll complain and say like it will pop up a little thing, a little bar, and say enable DRM. But I was still able to watch and listen to all the stuff on Amazon that I wanted to during the trial without enabling DRM, which allows for tracking. It promotes content restrictions, like only being able to view a file so many amounts of times and it disabling after a week or whatever. Stuff that just over the years, a lot of people have said, hey, you know what, this is really unnecessary. And it's more privacy invasive, and just versus, if I pay for the content, I should have reasonable access to it. I shouldn't have all these restrictions. All codecs, so this has all of these fancy video and audio media codecs and stuff enabled. So this is really looking like, if you want the latest, so-called greatest, and a lot of privacy yet a lot of features, this one's probably going to be it. And portable means you're just going to unpack this into some folder, go in and find that Chrome exe, double click it, and that's how you'd run it. You can create your own shortcut manually. Portable apps is, we'll go to that page so you can see specifically, and then archive ungoogled. So this one doesn't have an installer. That's the one downside, kind of. But like I said, all you do is unzip it into a folder and double click on that Chrome. And if you want, drag it, right click, drag it, and say create shortcut here up on your taskbar, whatever, and you'll have it. This one right here has an installer, but you can see it's not ungoogled. It has sync. So you want to be leery about that, but it does have the benefit of the installer where you download this, mini installer sync.exe. As soon as it downloads, you double click it and it will install it, and then it will automatically create a little shortcut somewhere in your Windows system for you, and then you can use that shortcut. And then you can uninstall it by going in and clicking uninstall in your package manager, right? So that's sort of the trade-off there. All these other ones are various, various combinations. Looks like built by a little bit different person, and AV2 for a recent computer higher than to having a processor with a little more optimized maybe for more modern computers probably. I did that on my phone. I noticed that there's a Chrome sort of like this, a Chromium that's optimized from that F-Droid site. So this is the portable apps version. That looks kind of like an installer. I don't know. So maybe this one's still portable, like it doesn't like install into program files, but it might. Who knows? If you run this, it might give you a link. I was going to show F-Droid, f-droid. I think it's an org site. It might be a .com. Yeah, it's org. And then you can come in here. This is for your phone. This is for Android-based phones. So that would be even Amazon Kindles. Even if you have some spin-off of Android that's not like Google Android per se, anything based on any kind of Android, this is going to work for. And you can download, they have their own app even, you can download right here, and it will give you that APK, which APKs are just like they are from the App Store, F-Droid APK. It's Android package file. And then you could double click or run that, send that to your phone or download it. Just visit the site on your phone, download that APK. You'll go to open it. The first time you try and open a third-party APK, it's going to say, hey, this isn't from the Google Play Store. It's like, good. And then they'll say, click here to go to your settings and enable it. And you'll go to your settings and say, hey, allow third-party APKs. Big deal. I've never even noticed that to be a remotely secure thing. If you're at some random website and they try and send you an APK, of course, don't run it, just like you wouldn't run anything that a random website might try and send you anyway on a desktop even. It's not quite as common as it used to be, so that's not quite as scary. Okay, what we're going to do is find apps. We'll put in Chromium here. And this Chromium SWE for Snapdragon builds. So this Snapdragon is the more recent ARM processors. Probably everybody these days on most phone has this. And this one, it will not only auto update, which I don't really like. I'd kind of just install it, let it auto update, and then go dig in the settings and disable this auto updater. You have to leave it installed though, I think, for the browser itself to work. But anyway, it tries to keep you up to date, and it requires Android 4 or higher. Big deal. These days, you'd be hard pressed not to be able to get a phone even for free that's Android 4 or higher. And it will give you this optimized version. See if it says here. It's unofficial build of code Aurora Chromium for Snapdragon, which I think is a little bit newer than even the Chromium or Chrome itself releases. Optimized fork targeting Qualcomm Snapdragon processors. So this is going to be a little bit less Googled than the Chrome that probably comes on your phone, and it's going to run unbelievably faster. Like especially those social media sites that you're like, oh, I feel like I got to download their app because it's so slow through the browser. This pretty much negates that. I was able to use those social media sites like way faster with this particular version. And you can dig through here. Let's see if they have a thing about apps, and then you can just go through here and see they just have like show all 182 development. Select the category. So games, 352 games. So they're not the most fancy games all the time, but if you go through it, there's some cool games in here. It's a hit or miss. So that will it's trial and error. Some of them are gonna suck. That's just the way it goes. Okay, so anyway, that's the Woolist Chromium there, and go back here. And what do we got here? We have the search engine to sorry, get distracted here. Default browser, open a specific page, go into advanced. Okay, here's the last thing I wanted to cover is privacy and security. So all these are off. Sync Google services, I think we already talked about that one. Allow Chromium sign-in off. Do not track, I turn this one on, which sends a little message. It doesn't do much. It just sends a message to the site saying, hey, I went in and took the time to turn this on. Allow sites to check even if you have payment method saved. No. Preload pages. No. That goes in and just starts drilling into links and loading pages and all their tracking cookies or whatever. site settings and clear browser data, you can click through into those, and that's where you clear out your cookies and stuff like that. So another one I disable is Google Cloud Print. I shut that off. It's, from my experience, it's unnecessary. I'm able to go in and utilize other routes to printing besides using their specific service. I go ahead and leave hardware acceleration on, and then continue running background apps when Chromium is closed. I turn that off, so those apps can be running crap in your background that you really don't want. It's just a personal preference to ask for saving each file. That's not a big deal. Site settings, you could go in here and punch in specific sites, like you could punch in twitter.com into the little search box, and then it will show you, www.twitter.com or just twitter.com or whatever, and you can selectively enable, disable permissions, and delete specific data. Clear browsing data, if you come in here, I click on the advanced tab and I select everything for all time, and then hit clear data. Right now this one's just on, I leave. If I just want to delete like my history and stuff like that, I'll leave cookies and site data, so that will leave me logged in. And then I'll leave site settings, so that if I'm like zoomed in or something on a page, that kind of stuff, and I'll uncheck them all. So this one I'll run more frequently, but then if I really want to clear everything out, I just click every box, and like I said, I go to all time, clear data, and that would be that. So that should pretty much, that's it. That's the good once over right there. So hopefully that helps you go in and fine tune your settings a little more, so that you can have a more private browsing experience. No matter what you do, there's always going to be ways for them to track and trace you a little bit. So you can just make it a lot more difficult for them. And like I said, it's more pleasant. You'll have less ads. You'll have that peace of mind of knowing like, hey, I'm doing things a little bit better, and you're not just freely dumping your information to these sites that, especially if you're watching this from me posting it through Triggered and stuff, I think you're an audience that isn't into that crap. I'm not. I don't, all those stupid extremist sites, I don't want them having boatloads of unchecked amounts of data about me. You know what I mean? I'm going to make them really, really dig to get that information. So thanks a lot. Take it easy.